Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, translated by Constance Garrett. Sonia looked in silence at her visitor, who was so attentively and unceremoniously scrutinizing her room, and even began at last to tremble with terror as though she was standing before her judge and the arbiter of her destinies. I am late. It's 11, isn't it? He asked, still not lifting his eyes. Yes, she muttered. Oh, yes, it is. She added hastily, as though in that lay her means of escape. My landlady's clock has just struck. I heard it myself. I've come to you for the last time. Raskolnikov went on gloomily, although this was the first time. I may perhaps not see you again. Are you going away? I don't know. Tomorrow. Then you are not coming to Katerina Ivanova tomorrow. Sonia's voice shook. I don't know. I shall know tomorrow morning. Never mind that. I've come to say one word. He raised his brooding eyes to her and suddenly noticed that he was sitting down, while she was all the while standing before him. Why are you standing? Sit down, he said in a changed voice, gentle and friendly. She sat down. He looked kindly and almost compassionately at her. How thin you are! What a hand! Quite transparent, like a dead hand. He took her hand. Sonia smiled faintly. I have always been like that, she said. Even when you lived at home? Yes, of course you were, he added abruptly, and the expression of his face and the sound of his voice changed again suddenly. He looked round him once more. You rent this room from the Kapernamovs? Yes. They live there through the door? Yes. They have another room like this. All in one room? Yes. I should be afraid in your room at night, he observed gloomily. They are very good people, very kind, answered Sonia, who still seemed bewildered. And all the furniture, everything is theirs. And they are very kind, and the children too often come to see me. They all stammer, don't they? Yes, he stammers and he's lame. And his wife too. It's not exactly that she stammers, but she can't speak plainly. She is a very kind woman. And he used to be a house serf. And there were 7 children. And it's only the eldest one that stammers, and the others are simply ill. But they don't stammer. But where did you hear about them? She added with some surprise. Your father told me. Then he told me all about you, and how you went out at 6 o'clock and came back at 9, and how Katerina Ivanova knelt down by your bed. Sonia was confused. I fancied I saw him today, she whispered hesitatingly. Whom? Father. I was walking in the street out there at the corner at about 10, and he seemed to be walking in front of me. It looked just like him. I wanted to go to Katerina Ivanova. You were walking in the streets? Yes, Sonia whispered abruptly, again overcome with confusion and looking down. Katerina Ivanova used to beat you, I dare say. Oh no, what are you saying? No. Sonia looked at him almost with dismay. You love her then? Love her? Of course, said Sonia with plaintive emphasis, and she clasped her hands in distress. Ah, you don't? If you only knew. You see, she is quite like a child. Her mind is quite unhinged, you see, from sorrow. And how clever she used to be, how generous, how kind. Ah, you don't understand. You don't understand. Sonia said this as though in despair, wringing her hands in excitement and distress. Her pale cheeks flushed. There was a look of anguish in her eyes. It was clear that she was stirred to the very depths, and she was longing to speak, to champion, to express something, a sort of insatiable compassion, if one may so express it. was reflected in every feature of her face. Beat me? How can you? Good heavens, beat me! If she did beat me, what then? What of it? You know nothing, nothing about it. She is so unhappy. How unhappy and ill. She is seeking righteousness. She is pure. She has such faith that there must be righteousness everywhere and she expects it. And if you were to torture her, she wouldn't do wrong. She doesn't see that it's impossible for people to be righteous and she's angry at it. Like a child. Like a child, she is good. And what will happen to you? Sonia looked at him inquiringly. They are left on your hands, you see. They were all on your hands before, though, and your father came to you to beg for drink. Well, how will it be now? I don't know, Sonia articulated mournfully. Will they stay there? I don't know. They are in debt for the lodging. But the landlady, I hear, said today that she wanted to get rid of them. And Katerina Ivanova says that she won't stay another minute. How is it she is so bold? She relies upon you? Oh no, don't talk like that. We are one. We live like one. Sonia was agitated again and even angry, as though a canary or some other little bird to be angry. And what could she do? What? What could she do? She persisted, getting hot and excited. And how she cried today. Her mind is unhinged. Haven't you noticed it? At 1 minute, she is worrying like a child that everything should be right tomorrow. The lunch and all that. Then she is wringing her hands, spitting blood, weeping, and all at once she will begin knocking her head against the wall in despair. Then she will be comforted again. She builds all her hopes on you. She says that you will help her now and that she will borrow a little money somewhere and go to her native town with me and set up a boarding school for the daughters of gentlemen and take me to superintend it. And we will begin a new splendid life. And she kisses and hugs me, comforts me. And you know, she has such faith in her fancies. One can't contradict her. And all the day long, she has been washing, cleaning, mending. She dragged the wash tub into the room with her feeble hands and sank on the bed, gasping for breath. We went this morning to the shops to buy shoes for Polenka and Lida, for theirs are quite worn out. Only the money we reckoned wasn't enough, not nearly enough. And she picked out such dear little boots, for she has taste. You don't know. And there in the shop she burst out crying before the shopmen because she hadn't enough. Ah, it was sad to see her. Well, after that, I can understand your living like this, Raskolnikov said with a bitter smile. Aren't you sorry for them? Aren't you sorry? Sonia flew at him again. Why, I know you gave your last penny yourself, though you'd seen nothing of it, and if you'd seen everything, oh dear, and how often I've brought her to tears. Only last week, yes, I. Only a week before his death. I was cruel, and how often I've done it. Ah, I've been wretched at the thought of it all day. Sonia wrung her hands as she spoke at the pain of remembering it. You were cruel? Yes, I went to see them. She went on weeping, and father said, read me something, Sonia. My head aches. Read to me. Here's a book. He had a book he had got from Ray Semyonovich Lebezhennikov. He lives there. He always used to get hold of such funny books. And I said I can't stay, as I didn't want to read, and I'd gone in chiefly to show Katerina Ivanova some collars. Lizaveta, the peddler, sold me some collars and cuffs, cheap, pretty new, embroidered ones. Katerina Ivanova liked them very much. She put them on and looked at herself in the glass and was delighted with them. Make me a present of them, Sonia, she said. Please do. Please do. She said she wanted them so much. And when could she wear them? They just reminded her of her old happy days. She looked at herself in the glass, admired herself, and she has no clothes at all, no things of her own, hasn't had all these years, and she never asks anyone for anything. She is proud and she'd sooner give away everything. And these she asked for, she liked them so much, and I was sorry to give them. What use are they to you, Katerina Ivanova? I said. I spoke like that to her. I ought not to have said that. She gave me such a look, and she was so grieved at my refusing her. And it was so sad to see. And she was not grieved for the callers, but for my refusing. I saw that. Ah, if only I could bring it all back, change it, take back those words. Ah, if I. But it's nothing to you. Did you know Lizaveta? Vieta? Lizaveta, the peddler? Yes. Did you know her? Sonia asked him with some surprise. Katerina Ivanova is in consumption, rapid consumption. She will die soon, said Raskolnikov after a pause without answering her question. Oh, no, no, no. And Sonia unconsciously clutched both his hands, as though imploring that she should not. But it will be better if she die. No, not better, not at all better. Sonia unconsciously repeated in dismay. And the children? What can you do except take them to live with you? Oh, I don't know, cried Sonia almost in despair, and she put her hands to her head. It was evident that the idea had very often occurred to her before, and he had only roused it again. And what if even now, while Katerina Ivanova is alive, you get ill and are taken to the hospital? What will happen then? He persisted pitilessly. How can you? That cannot be. And Sonia's face worked with awful terror. Cannot be? Raskolnikov went on with a harsh smile. You are not insured against it, are you? What will happen to them then? They will be in the street, all of them. She will cough and beg and knock her head against some wall, as she will today, and the children will cry. Then she will fall down, be taken to the police station and to the hospital. She will die. And the children? Oh no, God will not let it be, broke at last from Sonia's overburdened bosom. She listened, looking imploringly at him, clasping her hands in dumb entreaty as though it were all dependent upon him. Raskolnikov got up and began to walk about the room. A minute passed. Sonia was standing with her hands and her head hanging in terrible dejection. And can't you save? Put by for a rainy day? He asked, stopping suddenly before her. No, whispered Sonia. Of course not. Have you tried? He added almost ironically. Yes. And it didn't come off. Of course not. No need to ask. And again he paced the room. Another minute passed. You don't get money every day. Sonia was more confused than ever, and color rushed into her face again. No, she whispered with a painful effort. It will be the same with Polenka, no doubt, he said suddenly. No, no, it can't be. Sonia cried aloud in desperation, as though she had been stabbed. God would not allow anything so awful. He lets others come to it. No, no, God will protect her. God, she repeated beside herself. But perhaps there is no God at all. Raskolnikov answered with a sort of malignance, laughed and looked at her. Sonia's face suddenly changed. A tremor passed over it. She looked at him with unutterable reproach, tried to say something, but could not speak and broke into bitter sobs, hiding her face in her hands. You say Katerina Ivanova's mind is unhinged. Your own mind is unhinged, he said after a brief silence. 5 minutes passed. He still paced up and down the room in silence, not looking at her. At last he went up to her. His eyes glittered. He put two hands on her shoulders and looked straight into her tearful face. His eyes were hard, feverish, and piercing. His lips were twitching. All at once he bent down quickly and, dropping to the ground, kissed her foot. Sonia drew back from him, as from a madman, and certainly he looked like a madman. "What are you doing to me?" she muttered, turning pale, and a sudden anguish clutched her heart. He stood up at once. "I did not bow down to you. I bowed down to all the suffering of humanity," he said wildly, and walked away to the window. "Listen," he added, turning to her a minute later. "I just said just now to an insolent man that he was not worth your little finger, and that I did my sister honor by making her sit beside you." "Ah, you said that to them, and in her presence," cried Sonia, frightened. "Sit down with me. An honor. Why, I am dishonorable." "Ah, why did you say that?" "It was not because of your dishonor and your sin. I said that of you, but because of your great suffering. But you are a great sinner, that's true," he added almost solemnly. "And your worst sin is that you have destroyed and betrayed yourself for nothing. Isn't that fearful? Isn't it fearful that you are living in this filth which you loathe so, and at the same time you know yourself? You've only to open your eyes that you are not helping anyone by it, not saving anyone from anything. Tell me," he went on almost in a frenzy, "how this shame and degradation can exist in you side by side with other opposite holy feelings. It would be better, 1,000 times better and wiser to leap into the water and end it all." "But what would become of them?" Sonia asked faintly, gazing at him with eyes of anguish, but not seeming surprised at his suggestion. Raskolnikov looked strangely at her. He read it all in her face, so she must have had that thought already, perhaps many times, and earnestly she had thought out in her despair how to end it, and so earnestly that now she scarcely wondered at his suggestion. She had not even noticed the cruelty of his words, the significance of his reproaches, and his peculiar attitude to her shame. She had, of course, not noticed either, and that too was clear to him. But he saw how monstrously the thought of her disgraceful, shameful position was torturing her, and had long tortured her. What, he thought, could hitherto have hindered her from putting an end to it? Only then he realized what those poor little orphan children and that pitiful half crazy Katerina Ivanovna knocking her head against the wall in her consumption meant for Sonia. But nevertheless, it was clear to him again that with her character and the amount of education she had after all received, she could not in any case remain so. He was still confronted by the question, how could she have remained so long in that position without going out of her mind, since she could not bring herself to jump into the water? Of course, he knew that Sonia's position was an exceptional case, though unhappily not unique and not infrequent indeed. But that was exceptionalness. Her tinge of education, her previous life might, one would have thought, have killed her at the first step on that revolting path. What held her up surely, not depravity. All that infamy had obviously only touched her mechanically. Not one drop of real depravity had penetrated to her heart. He saw that. He saw through her as she stood before him. There are three ways before her, he thought: the canal, the madhouse, or at last to sink into depravity which obscures the mind and turns the heart to stone. The last idea was the most revolting, but he was a skeptic. He was young, abstract, and therefore cruel, and so he could not help believing that the last end was the most likely. But can that be true? He cried to himself. Can that creature who has still preserved the purity of her spirit be consciously drawn at last into that sink of filth and iniquity? Can the process already have begun? Can it be that she has only been able to bear it till now, because vice has begun to be less loathsome to her? No, no, that cannot be, he cried, as Sonia had just before. No, what has kept her from the canal till now is the idea of sin, and they, the children. And if she has not gone out of her mind, but who says she has not gone out of her mind? Is she in her senses? Can one talk? Can one reason as she does? How can she sit on the edge of the abyss of loathsomeness into which she is slipping and refuse to listen when she is told of danger? Does she expect a miracle? No doubt she does. Doesn't that all mean madness? He stayed obstinately at that thought. He liked that explanation indeed better than any other. He began looking more intently at her. So, you pray to God a great deal, Sonia? He asked her. Sonia did not speak. He stood beside her, waiting for an answer. What should I be without God? She whispered rapidly, forcibly, glancing at him and with suddenly flashing eyes and squeezing his hand. Ah, so that is it, he thought. And what does God do for you? He asked, probing her further. Sonia was silent a long while, as though she could not answer. Her weak chest kept heaving with emotion. Be silent. Don't ask. You don't deserve, she cried suddenly, looking sternly and wrathfully at him. That's it? That's it, he repeated to himself. He does everything, she whispered quickly, looking down again. That's the way out. That's the explanation, he decided, scrutinizing her with eager curiosity. With a new, strange, almost morbid feeling, he gazed at that pale, thin, irregular, angular little face, those soft blue eyes, which could flash with such fire, such stern energy, that little body still shaking with indignation and anger, and it all seemed to him more and more strange, almost impossible. She is a religious maniac, he repeated to himself. There was a book lying on the chest of drawers. He had noticed it every time he paced up and down the room. Now he took it up and looked at it. It was the New Testament in the Russian translation. It was bound in leather, old and worn. Where did you get that? He called to her across the room. She was still standing in the same place, three steps from the table. It was brought me, and she answered, as it were unwilling, not looking at him. Who brought it? Lizaveta. I asked her for it. Lizaveta? Strange, he thought. Everything about Sonia seemed to him stranger and more wonderful every moment. He carried the book to the candle and began to turn the pages. Where is the story of Lazarus? He asked suddenly. Sonia looked obstinately at the ground and would not answer. She was standing sideways to the table. Where is the raising of Lazarus? Find it for me. Sonia. She stole a glance at him. You are not looking in the right place. It's in the fourth gospel. She whispered sternly without looking at him. Find it and read it to me, he said. He sat down with his elbow on the table, leaned his head on his hand, and looked away sullenly, prepared to listen. In 3 weeks' time, they'll welcome me in the madhouse. I shall be there if I am not in a worse place, he muttered to himself. Sonia heard Raskolnikov's request distrustfully and moved hesitatingly to the table. She took the book, however. Haven't you read it? She asked, looking up at him across the table. Her voice became sterner and sterner. Long ago, when I was at school. Read. And haven't you heard it in the church? I I haven't been. Do you go often? No, whispered Sonia. Raskolnikov smiled. I understand. And you won't go to your father's funeral tomorrow. Yes, I shall. I was at the church last week too. I had a requiem service. For whom? For Lizaveta. She was killed with an axe. His nerves were more and more strained. His head began to go round. Were you friends with Lizaveta? Yes, she was good. She used to come, not often. She couldn't. We used to read together and talk. She will see God. Last phrase sounded strange in his ears, and here was something new again. The mysterious meetings with Lizaveta, and both of them religious maniacs. I shall be a religious maniac myself soon. It's infectious. Read, he cried irritably and insistently. Sonia still hesitated. Her heart was throbbing. She hardly dared to read to him. He looked almost with exasperation at the unhappy lunatic. What for? You don't believe, she whispered softly and as it were breathlessly. Read, I want you to, he persisted. You used to read to Lizaveta. Sonia opened the book and found the place. Her hands were shaking, her voice failed her. Twice she tried to begin and could not bring out the first syllable. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany. She forced herself at last to read, but at the third word her voice broke like an overstrained string. There was a catch in her breath. Raskolnikov saw in part why Sonia could not bring herself to read to him, and the more he saw this, the more roughly and irritably he insisted on her doing so. He understood only too well how painful it was for her to betray and unveil all that was her own. He understood that these feelings really were her secret treasure, which she had kept perhaps for years, perhaps from childhood, while she lived with an unhappy father and a distracted stepmother, crazed by grief. In the midst of starving children and unseemingly abuses and reproaches. But at the same time, he knew now and now knew for certain that although it filled her with dread and suffering, yet she had a tormenting desire to read and to read to him that he might hear it, and to read now whatever might come of it. She read this in her eyes. He could see it in her intense emotion. She mastered herself, controlled the spasm in her throat, and went on reading the 11th chapter of St. John. She went on to the 19th verse. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask God, God will give it thee. Then she stopped again with a shamefaced feeling that her voice would quiver and break again. Jesus said unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whatsoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She saith unto him. And drawing a painful breath, Sonia read distinctively and forcibly, as though she were making a public confession of faith. Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. She stopped and looked up quickly at him, but controlling herself, went on reading. Raskolnikov sat without moving, his elbows on the table and his eyes turned away. She read to the 32nd verse. Then, when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, Where have ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? Raskolnikov turned and looked at her with emotion. Yes, he had known it. She was trembling in a real physical fever. He had expected it. She was getting near the story of the greatest miracle, and a feeling of immense triumph came over her. Her voice rang out like a bell. Triumph and joy gave it power. The lines danced before her eyes, but she knew what she was reading by heart. At the last verse, could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind, dropping her voice, she passionately reproduced the doubt, the reproach and censure of the blind, disbelieving Jews, who in another moment would fall at his feet as though struck by thunder, sobbing and believing. And he too is blinded and unbelieving. He too will hear. He too will believe. Yes, yes. At once now was she what she was dreaming, and she was quivering with happy anticipation. Jesus, therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. She laid emphasis on the word 4. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth. She read loudly, cold and trembling with ecstasy, as though she were seeing it before her eyes. Bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him, and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. She could read no more, closed the book, and got up from her chair quickly. That is all about the raising of Lazarus, she whispered severely and abruptly, and turning away, she stood motionless, not daring to raise her eyes to him. She still trembled feverishly. The candle end was flickering out in the battered candlestick, dimly lighting up in the poverty-stricken room the murderer and the harlot, who had so strangely been reading together the eternal book. 5 minutes or more passed. I came to speak of something, Raskolnikov said aloud, frowning. He got up and went to Sonia. She lifted her eyes to him in silence. His face was particularly stern and there was a sort of savage determination in it. I have abandoned my family today, he said. My mother and my sister. I'm not going to see them. I've broken with them completely. What for? Asked Sonia, amazed. Her recent meeting with his mother and sister had left a great impression which she could not analyze. She heard his news almost with horror. I have only you now, he added. Let us go together. I've come to you. We are both accursed. Let us go our way together. His eyes glittered as though he were mad. Sonia thought in her turn. Go where? She asked in alarm and she involuntarily stepped back. How do I know? I only know it's the same road. I know that and nothing more. It's the same goal. She looked at him and understood nothing. She knew only that he was terribly, infinitely unhappy. No one of them will understand if you tell them, but I have understood. I need you, that is why I have come to you. I don't understand, whispered Sonia. You'll understand later. Haven't you done the same? You, too, have transgressed, have had the strength to transgress. You have laid hands on yourself. You have destroyed a life, your own. It's all the same. You might have lived in spirit and understanding, but you'll end in the Haymarket. But you won't be able to stand it, and if you remain alone, you'll go out of your mind like me. You are like a mad creature already. So we must go together on the same road. Let us go. What for? What's all this for? Said Sonia, strangely and violently agitated by his words. What for? Because you can't remain like this. That's why. You must look things straight in the face at last and not weep like a child and cry that God won't allow it. What will happen if you should really be taken to the hospital tomorrow? She is mad and in consumption. She'll soon die, and the children. Do you mean to tell me Polenka won't come to grief? Haven't you seen the children here at the street corners, sent out by their mothers to beg? I found out where those mothers live and in what surroundings. Children can't remain children there. At 7, the child is vicious and a thief. Yet children, you know, are the image of Christ. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He bade us honor and love them. They are the humanity of the future. What's to be done? What's to be done? Repeated Sonia, weeping hysterically and wringing her hands. What's to be done? Break what must be broken. Once for all, that's all. And take the suffering on oneself. What you don't understand, you'll understand later. Freedom and power, and above all, power over all trembling creation and all the ant heap. That's the goal. Remember that. That's my farewell message. Perhaps it's the last time I shall speak to you. If I don't come tomorrow, you'll hear of it all, and then remember these words. And some day later on, in years to come, you'll understand perhaps what they meant. If I come tomorrow, I'll tell you who killed Lizaveta. Goodbye. Sonia stared with terror. Why, do you know who killed her? She asked, chilled with horror, looking wildly at him. I know and will tell. You, only you. I have chosen you out. I'm not coming to you to ask for forgiveness, but simply to tell you. I chose you out long ago to hear this. When your father talked of you and when Lizaveta was alive, I thought of it. Goodbye. Don't shake hands. Tomorrow. He went out. Sonia gazed at him as at a madman. But she herself was like one insane and felt it. Her head was going round. Good heavens! How does he know who killed Lizaveta? What did those words mean? It's awful, but at the same time the idea did not enter her head. Not for a moment. Oh, he must be terribly unhappy. He has abandoned his mother and sister. What for? What has happened? And what had he in his mind? What did he say to her? He had kissed her foot and said, Yes, he had said it clearly that he could not live without her. Oh, merciful heaven! Sonia spent the whole night feverish and delirious. She jumped up from time to time, wept, wept, and wrung her hands, then sank again into feverish sleep and dreamt of Polenka, Katerina Ivanovna, and Lizaveta, of reading the Gospel and him with his pale face, with burning eyes, kissing her feet, weeping. On the other side of the door, on the right, which divided Sonia's room from Madame Rezelik's flat, was a room which had long stood empty. A card was fixed on the gate and a notice struck in the windows over the canal, advertising it to let. Sonia had long been accustomed to the rooms being empty and uninhabited. But all that time Mr. Svidrigailov had been standing, listening at the door of the empty room. When Raskolnikov went out, he stood still, thought a moment, went on tiptoe to his own room, which adjoined the empty one, brought a chair and noiselessly carried it to the door that led to Sonia's room. The conversation had struck him as interesting and remarkable, and he had greatly enjoyed it. So much so that he brought a chair that might not in the future, tomorrow for instance, have to endure the inconvenience of standing a whole hour, but might listen in comfort.